We're going to go live now.
Okay.
Live streamer turned into a shuffler.
Yes, so, okay.
Good morning. Welcome to the Elliott Church. It's good to see y'all. Good to see people online. Today is our annual meeting Sunday, so that, of course, means some extra things, which I think, Rosemary, you're going to fill everyone in on?
Good morning, and thank you all for coming out on this pretty wintry day. And thanks to all of our shovelers and salters and all around make it accessible to the church people this morning, so thank you for that. As Adam said, today is our annual meeting. Because of the kind of church we are, which is a congregationally based church, we are the authority of the church. So as a group, as a community, we vote for our budget. We vote to accept reports. And that meeting will start right after the service. There'll be a little break, short break. Those of you who are watching us from home, what we would ask you to do if you are watching, would you just comment in the comment chat section, just so that we know you're there and we can count you as present at the meeting. The other thing I wanted to point out, there's lots of inserts in your order of service. It's Communion Sunday, there's announcements about trips, but there's also something that has not appeared for about a year, which is a form to be filled out announcing our Canvas drive. So this is our annual time where we ask people to pledge to support the work of the church, kind of related to the fact that we govern ourselves. We also are responsible for our budget. So if you see this piece of paper, it's in your order of service, you can fill it out while you're here. If you want to fold it and drop it into the offertory, that's fine. If you want to wait till the annual meeting, that's fine. But it gives you some basic information. So I just wanted to make that announcement. And with that, I think I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Rosemary. For those of you who may not be aware, Rosemary is our esteemed moderator. So you have to do what she says. That's the truth. But thank you for that. I have one other quick announcement. You may recall this, the new membership book. Sometime in September, I can't remember, was it second, third Sunday? Margaret, do you remember?
I don't.
Oh, yeah, it's in the book. So we re-signed, people who were members of the church re-signed this one, which is a little ritual that you do when you get a new membership book and you retire the old one. But anyone who has already joined the church and hasn't signed the new book is welcome to do so. We'll put it out. It'll be out front here. Probably, if we're really clever and liturgical, we'll have moved the communion stuff and put the book on. And so just feel free to just come up and sign it and date it. It's just like the old book. You've done it once before. But it'd be great to get everybody in the new book as we move along. That was the only other announcement. Oh yes, one other announcement. The communion bread is gluten and dairy free. So note that if you need to. And now, because it is annually meeting Sunday, let's start with a moment of silence to think about building and maintaining our church and congregation. please join in the recitation of our covenants. In the love of truth and in the spirit of Jesus, we unite for the worship of God and the service of all.
Good morning, friends. We have a couple of readings for you this morning. The first is coming from our hymnal, actually. It's by the poet Denise Levertov. This piece is called Winter Meditation. The bare trees have made up their seed bundles. They are ready now. The warm brown light pauses briefly, shrugs, and moves on. They are ready now to play dead for a while. I, human, have not as yet devised how to obtain such a privilege. Their spring will find them rested. I and my kind battle a wakeful way to ours. And our second reading comes from Paul's letter to James, chapter 2, verses 14 through 26. My siblings, what good is it to profess faith without practicing it? Such faith has no power to save. If any are in need of clothes and have no food to live on, and one of you says to them, "Goodbye and good luck, stay warm and well fed," without giving them the bare necessities of life, then what good is this? So it is with faith. If good deeds don't go with it, faith is dead. Some of you will say that you have faith while I have deeds. Fine. I'll prove to you that I have faith by showing you my good deeds. Now you prove to me that you have faith without any good deeds to show. You believe in the one God. Fine. But even the demons have the same belief, and they tremble with fear. Don't you realize, all of you, that faith without good deeds is useless? Wasn't our ancestor Abraham justified by his actions when he offered his child Isaac on the altar? There you see proof that faith and deeds were working together, and that faith was made complete by the deeds. You also see that the scripture was fulfilled, which says Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as justice. This is why he is called the friend of God. So you see, people are justified by their works and not by faith alone. And in the same way, wasn't even Rahab justified by works when she welcomed the messengers and showed them a different way to leave? Be assured, then, that faith without works is as dead as a body without a spirit. And now please join in the responsive reading, which is in your gray hymnal, number 558. I will read the regular text. Please respond with the text in italics. And this comes from the book of Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven.
A time to be born and a time to die.
A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted.
A time to kill and a time to heal.
A time to break down and a time to build up.
A time to weep and a time to laugh.
A time to mourn and a time to dance.
A time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together.
A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing.
A time to seek and a time to lose.
A time to keep and a time to throw away.
A time to tear and a time to sow.
A time to keep silence and a time to speak.
A time to love and a time to hate.
A time for war.
And a time for peace.
Amen. Please join me now in the spirit of prayer, beginning with a moment of quiet to start to settle in and to open our hearts, holding all of those who are in need of our prayers this morning. This morning in particular, I want to lift up prayers for the family, friends, and community of Amir Locke, a Black man who was shot and killed by Minneapolis police during a no-knock warrant on Wednesday. We bear witness to the grief and the rage of the Black community, and we recommit ourselves once again to the work of resisting and dismantling anti-Black racism in our communities. And I pray now with the words of Vanessa Southern. O force of vision in our lives, source of dreams that hold us captive and give us reasons to wake. Help us to find the strength to persist. When circumstance conspires against greatness, or the honest telling of truths. Help us to find the power and inspiration to endure. Or, at the very least, help us to find our way back to the simple rituals of love and justice that can resuscitate our dreams. In this life, may we love deeply, act in humble but determined ways, and never waver. May we persist until the sun sets and wake again to persist once more, until the world of our boldest aspirations is made real by passion and also by endurance, stubborn faithfulness, and persistence. May it be so. And now, as Jesus taught, let us pray together the Lord's Prayer. The words are printed in your order of service. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And now we will take up this morning's offering, free gifts for a free church.
Can't believe I forgot the most important announcements, which is next week is the ski trip. And church is canceled for anyone who's not on the trip, because most of you are coming. So, people online, now you know. We'll post we have 2 years of video sermons. So we'll post something, like a best of, for people who want to watch it in one. Maybe even at the ski trip. I won't do it to you. All right. So it's been hard, actually, to get this reflection together this year. It's always hard to write a reflection for annual meeting Sunday because we do so much over the course of a church year. But in a year like this, where so many things that we did had a certain degree of difficulty, we aren't necessarily so keen, or I am not necessarily so keen, to look back on some of those things. Still, it's worth doing so, because in those stories are signs of spring, signs of a new life for us and our congregation. The poet Denise Levertov, in our reading today, talks about the trees in wintertime. Their spring, she says, will find them rested. Their spring will find them rested. And while as human beings we don't function that way, I and my kind, she says, battle a wakeful way to ours. There might be a way in which this old church that we inhabit and participate in, there might be a way in which this old church does function like a tree, does have and respond to seasons. And not just in that literal journey from a literal winter to a literal spring, but also from the metaphorical dark, cold winter of the last couple years into the spring of whatever comes next. Now, this is important because as we come out of this time of frantic survival effort, we need to remember to leave space for joy. Because joy, new life, is what is waiting to surge into those old trees as spring arises. And maybe it is waiting to come forth at Elliot as well. And we do not want to be so tired and distracted as to miss it. So let's take a moment of Sabbath rest. A moment of silence here at the beginning of the sermon. I know that's weird. A moment of Sabbath on this Sabbath day. And remember what last year was like. Now, everything we have done this year has been momentous, hasn't it? Everything we have done as individuals in our own lives, and certainly as a congregation, everything has required resolve, commitment, and creativity. It has required the kind of effort that surviving winter requires. We know that this larger spring will come. And now, thanks to all those momentous works that we did, we do in fact see a few signs that we are making progress. Last annual meeting, you may recall, was online. We were still months away from our outdoor, in-person worship phase. We were mourning the canceled ski trip. We were missing each other's company, and we were keeping on in the hopes of seeing around the corner of the pandemic. It was a bit of a slog, really. It was actually quite a slog at times. We had to work to get through. We had to try new things almost every week, but we did turn that corner. And we grew in the Spirit as we met each challenge with whatever grace and energy we could muster to arrive at this point today. You see, there have been signs of spring. But sometimes we only see them because we look back to the turning points of this long winter. Now, the part of this year that I have personally the most trouble recollecting with my COVID brain, the part of the year that I have trouble with may be the most important, the biggest turning point of the year, namely the many, many meetings and plans for how and when to get back together in 3D. ultimately culminating in dragging out the lectern onto the side lawn in May and June and running wires through the windows of the sanctuary, which we got to revisit on Christmas Eve, of course. During that time, we had to get used to traffic sounds, weather, the honking horns, shouts from people passing by who were mad at what our banners and flags said about us, and God knows what else. And then we moved back inside. Enduring the changes in our mask policies, figuring out how to be a community in one place again, or mostly in one place. I looked at my annual report before getting ready for worship today, and I realized that I didn't actually include much of all that. But that transition from the spring of 2021 to today took a lot of effort from everybody. And it was the turning point, or at least one important turning point, because we are still turning. I mean, this turn, we're on a long curve. Our one hymn policy, our masks, our outdoor coffee hour, all strange things that we've adopted recently, all strange things that have become more an accepted part of our lives than they once were, but not necessarily more normal. We know that whatever we get in the future will not be like what it once was. But we also know we don't want it to be like this, because we are still picking away at what we will become. Still, we're doing okay. We're showing what matters to us. We are demonstrating our faith to each other and to the world. And we see those signs of spring in what we do together and what we do apart. Our reading from James declares, "Show me your faith apart from your works, and I, by my works, will show you my faith." Show me your faith apart from your works, and I, James says, by my works will show you my faith. At every meeting, formal ones like today, and substantially less formal ones like the ski weekend, at every meeting, we make decisions about what and who we want to be, showing our faith through our works. And through our work, we have built a beloved community of faith. And now, as we enter another church year, now there's more work to do. But maybe, as I mentioned earlier, there is time for rest as well. There is time for celebration and joy. In fact, rest, celebration, and joy, that is part of the work of faith too. The thing about faith is that it requires reflection. Faith requires reflection. And since we have been working so hard, focused on those problems of our particular individual days, we need also to remember our Sabbath days. So that maybe in this church that we are becoming, we can remember why we joined. The coming of spring will bring life and love to our tasks. Now, last Parish Committee meeting, we talked about this a little bit, about bringing back our fun events. The ski weekend is one of them. We're also bringing back, once the seasons change, pub theology and the Lookout Hangouts. Chances to talk about ideas in a less structured environment. Concerts will return, and service opportunities. We have plans in this church. There will be work to get them going. But I think we can do it. And I think the change will do us good. Because what we are doing right now is, in a way, building a new church. We are building a new church right now. In the wake of our experiences over the last couple of years, what comes after will not be like what has been. And this too gives us an opportunity to be more of the people we actually are. More of the people we, here in this room and online, actually are. We are signing the new book of an old institution these days. And when we do this, we are not beholden to the things that do not work for us. We are allowed to dream, to stand down a bit, to think about not what this place was, nor what we are told it should be, but instead to think about who we are and what we would like our congregation to be. As I have mentioned in past years at this time, organized religion of every faith and tradition struggles to find its way in an era of new discoveries and new change. But here at Elliott Church, we have always been comfortable with change. So why should we be afraid now? Why should we fear the motion of the seasons from the dead of winter to the rebirth of spring? We are, by being open to new ways, just living out the tradition we have been given. James says, by my works I will show you my faith. By my works I will show you my faith. Not by my works I will maintain someone else's faith. So over the next year, we need to find ways to step back and make sure that we are working smarter, not harder, to be who we actually are. And now, as we gather for communion, and then for our meeting, let's think on these things today. Let's think about how spring is coming, and that a new life is filling old vessels, that we are blessed to be here to witness it, that we still have time to take our time and to breathe. Amen. Now please find your communion insert. It is, as always, in this odd Miami Dolphins color, which, as we know, has no impact on the Super Bowl.
Let us come together to celebrate the story of Jesus, to connect to that story and to each other through the sharing of bread and wine. These simple things have been through the ages a sign of unity, a source of strength, and a witness to the power of sacrificial love. Now let us join together in silence for our private prayers of confession. And now please join me in the responsive prayer. Your steadfast love, O God, extends to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds.
Your righteousness is like the mighty mountains, your judgments are like the great deep. You save humans and animals alike.
How precious is your steadfast love, O God, all people may take refuge in the shadow of your wings.
They feast in the abundance of your house, and you give them drink from the river of your delight.
For with you is the fountain of life. In your light we see light.
O continue your steadfast love to those who know you, and your salvation to the upright at heart.
Do not let the foot of the arrogant tread on me.
or the hand of the wicked drive me away.
Amen. And now a reading from the Gospel of Luke. The story. When the day of the feast of the unleavened bread arrived, when the Passover lamb was to be sacrificed, Jesus sent Peter and John out with the instructions, "Go and make the preparations for us to eat the Passover." They asked, "Where do you want us to prepare the Seder?" Jesus answered, "When you enter this city, a man will meet you carrying a jar of water. Follow him into the house he enters. Say to the owner of the house, 'The rabbi asks, where is the guest room where I can eat the Passover Seder with my disciples?' The owner will show you a large, furnished upper room. Make the preparations there." They went out and found everything as Jesus had told them, and they prepared for the Passover. When the hour had come, Jesus took a place at the table with the apostles. Jesus said to them, "I've longed to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. I tell you, I will not eat it again until everything is fulfilled in the reign of God." Then taking a cup of wine, Jesus gave thanks and said, "Take this and share it among you. I tell you, I will not drink wine from now on until the reign of God comes."
Then he took a loaf of bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Eat this bread in remembrance of Jesus and those who have been near and dear to us." And he did the same with the cup after supper, saying, "This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood." this wine in remembrance of Jesus and those who have been near and dear to us. Be ours a religion. Oh, that's not the one. Our closing prayers by Reverend Duke Gray. The blessing of truth be upon us. The power of love direct us and sustain us. May the peace of this community preserve our going out and our coming in from this time forth until we meet again. Amen. Now join with me in our one hymn. Hymn number 1 this week, which makes life easier. The traditional annual meeting, May Nothing Evil Cross the School. Please rise. Go your ways, knowing not the answer to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing that you know. Amen, and blessed be.
And those of you, it's depending on your clock. Oh, it's exactly 11 o'clock. Those of you who have had either the privilege or the problem of being in a meeting with me knows that I tend to move things along. So I have this tension during annual meeting of trying to move through it quickly because I know people want to get out and get about and don't want to stay inside for too much longer. That being said, obviously I need to stop if there are questions on any of the reports. But I just wanted to start, first of all, and just welcome you all to the meeting. Thank you for coming, and thank you for those on who are watching at home. I believe we have a quorum of, I'm going to say the count is like 27 people, counting people online, and we may adjust that as time goes on. One of the logistical things that's going to happen with the online aspect of this is that I've been informed there's a little bit of a delay, right? So there's about a 15, 20 seconds between when I'm saying this in real time to when the folks at home are actually hearing it. So when I call for a vote, because I tend to go so speedily, we might vote and say, okay, moving on, and the people at home haven't even written anything in yet. So I will try very hard to just take a count, do a little dance, 15 seconds, and then give people that chance to weigh in if they have a comment or a question. If any of you who are monitoring this see a comment from somebody saying, wait, just tell me. We're not that formal, okay? So in terms of the overall way that the meeting proceeds, the annual report and the agenda essentially go hand in hand. There was going to be a couple of changes already, which is there's a proposed bylaw change to the endowment policy, and I had pushed that down into the agenda with the different committee reports, but since we don't often have a bylaw change, I'm moving that up so that we'll do it right after we accept the annual meeting minutes. So I'll just mention that again. So we'll go through that bylaw change, which I'll give a little background for. We'll take a vote on that. Then we'll get into the individual committee reports. When we do that, that's the part where I tend to go a little quickly. The reports are the reports. If as you're scanning it or you read it at home earlier, you had a question about something that's been written or something's not clear to you or you have an observation about something, absolutely raise a hand, put a comment. Otherwise, I'm going to go through the basic committee reports excluding finance, go through those rather quickly if there are comments or added things people need to make. Then we'll take one vote on all those committee reports as a bunch. Then we'll do the finance presentation. Then we'll take a vote on the budget. Then we're going to do canvas, a little kickoff of the canvas. And then I do the nominating report, which is the very last thing, and then we're done. So that kind of gives you the overview. We printed off agendas. I think everybody has one. There's copies of the annual report. I think everybody has one of those. There's plenty up here in the front. All right, we're ready to go. So the next thing on the agenda is an opening prayer from Adam.
Okay, the privileges of being the minister is I've already gotten to say all the stuff I wanted to say, and we got our thinking time into. So the prayer will be everybody's favorite responsive prayer, the one that has money in it. So that will be number 728 in your gray hymnal. It was written, incidentally, by John Burns, who was a past president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, and then became the minister of the UU Church in Needham, and is retired now. Blessed are those who yearn for deepening more than escape, who are not afraid to grow in spirit.
Blessed are those who take seriously the bonds of community, who regularly join in celebration and learning, who come as much to minister as we minister unto.
Blessed are those who bring their children, who invite their friends to come along to join in fellowship, service, learning, and growth.
Blessed are those who support the church in its work by their regular, sustained, and generous giving, and who give themselves no less than their money.
Blessed are those who know that the church is often imperfect, yet rather than harbor feelings of anger or disappointment, bring their concerns and needs to the attention of the church leaders.
Blessed are those who, when asked to serve, do it gladly, who realize that change is brought about through human mediating, who do the work of committees and stay till the end.
Blessed are those who speak their minds in meetings, who can take and give criticism, who keep alive their sense of humor.
Blessed are those who know that the work of the church is the transformation of society, who have a vision of beloved community transcending the present, and who do not shrink from controversy, sacrifice, or change.
Blessed are they indeed. Amen. Minister's report is next. It's in your report. Do you have any questions for me? Okay. Those are mine.
Thank you, Adam. So the next item, organized here. The next item on the agenda is to entertain a motion to accept the minutes from last year's annual meeting. That would have been the I know everybody, maybe not everybody, has this ongoing confusion of we're in 2022, but the annual report was for the year of 2021. So last year's annual meeting, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes from last year's meeting. Anyone make that motion? Just say, I do.
I do.
Anyone second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye. I guess this is where I start waiting for the 20 seconds. Okay, I was going to, and the next thing that we will actually vote on, I'm going to talk about the endowment, but in your annual report, once you get past the minister's report, there's the assistant minister's report, and there's the moderator's report. Since we're passing those pages by, if there are any questions about those while we're here, Tara is here to answer a question, I'm here to answer a question, otherwise we will take a vote on all of those as part of that committee vote. Sent out to the community several weeks ago, as is dictated by our bylaws, that you need to announce these things in advance. So I think we did our due diligence on that. Just a little bit of background. This is a pretty simple policy change. It's just to clarify something, and it was precipitated because we did get a gift that fell into this category, which it was a bequest from a member who had passed, and there was no direction given to it. And so the Endowment Committee and the Finance Committee, in discussing that, realized that we'd never said anything specifically about that in the endowment. So we put language together to basically say that if we get a financial bequest or a large gift that is not directed, there's no specific reason, no specific project that that person or family wants that money to be used for, it's considered undirected. And if we receive undirected funds, that they would be put into the endowment fund, just kind of an automatic thing. And the reason for that, just by way of, again, background, I always view it as the endowment fund is the gift that keeps on giving. So if somebody gives money and it goes into the endowment, as you know, the endowment fund operating budget of the church. So even though some people's mind endowments are just tucked away and never touched and never accessed and we never get to see the benefit of it, we in fact have an endowment committee that provides some support of the operating budget every year. And that percentage is somewhere about, do I have it, it's like 3.5%-ish? Yeah. 3.5% of the, anyway, I'm not gonna somebody say, it's not of the gain, it's not of the principal, it's of the principal. And that's based on the return, and there's a rolling average, and I have to tell you, the endowment committee runs this well. But basically, we are supported by them anyway. So by putting money that has no direction given into the endowment fund, we're basically providing that ongoing gift that whoever gave the money, it's coming out in some percentage every single year. So I'm going to read the change, and before I take a vote, I'll ask for if there are any questions or there needs to be any discussion. Go ahead, Chris.
One note, Tara can actually see people who are voting, so she can let me know when last people voted. I think we were like 5 seconds ahead of some folks last time. So if you just let her know when the last person has commented or question.
We were 5 seconds too fast or too slow? Okay. All right, we'll just let them know. We'll just wait.
I'll tell you.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to read you. This is actually a section of the bylaws. If you haven't studied the bylaws, great reading matter. It's online. You can have an access to it anytime. It's all in Roman numerals, so it's good practice for those of you who are learning Roman numerals. The endowment fund is in Article. Now I'm like, oh, what is X1X? Charlotte? 19. This is a trick question. Article 19, the endowment fund, Section A. And it's just the purpose of the fund. So we've made a slight change, I'll point that out. This is how it has currently read, and then I'll point to the change. It is the desire and intention of the congregation to establish a fund to receive, manage, and disperse gifts, grants, and bequests, and to provide for future needs of the church. Here comes the change, it's an addition. Financial bequests to the Elliott Church that are undirected by the donor shall be allocated to the endowment fund. So we've literally just added that sentence into the policy. And I would ask if there are any questions or discussion that anybody would like to have about that proposed amendment to the bylaw. Nobody in the sanctuary. We'll see if anyone at home. Since excuse me, I'm going to call for a motion to be made to accept that change. All those in, if anyone would make that motion, just say, I move. Move. Seconded? Okay. All those in favor of making this proposed change to the endowment funds policy section, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay. Have you ever had one of those moments when you didn't realize just how screwed up a printed job could be?
I know.
I just had that moment as reading the report, which we proofed many times before it went to print. And there's a whole out of order thing. So the RE report is separated into 2 pages.
I know.
It goes from buildings and grounds right to worship. I know every part of every report is in here, so just bear with us. If you're looking through the report, you'll be mighty surprised. This is the point where we would start to go through each committee's report. And like we do at Parish Committee, we go through them alphabetically, which is when I realized how misprinted this became, but it's all in there. The first committee alphabetically is...
Melissa just said, ah!
Trust me, we proofed this in real time. We proofed it in the format that it would be printed, and I thought I checked right through it when I picked them up. Okay, so the first committee would be Buildings and Grounds. I preface, and I'll start to sound like a broken record, but I will say this at the beginning of each committee's report. We are so lucky to have the quality of volunteers that we do in this small but mighty congregation. And the Building and Grounds Committee takes the lead on that, not just alphabetically. So we have folks between, Sam and Lee, and Bill is on there, even though he's ex officio. We have Herb Nolan now has stepped up to be on the Landscaping Subcommittee with Carol and Eileen, and they've done a yeoman's job over the past year. Their report includes all the buildings that we have, as well as a landscape report, and if you were lucky enough to work on the landscape task force day, it was a heap of fun and a lot of work was done. So are there any questions about the Buildings and Grounds report?
And Brad.
Oh, sorry, and our newest member, Brad Peterson, to the Buildings and Grounds. Thank you. I was going to get to that in nominating, but it's okay. Any questions or comments for the Buildings and Ground Committee, or somebody need to add to something that they've already had in the report? No additions, we'll just keep going. We would have done endowment, which we never do as its own committee. It's usually within finance, but I handled that already. The next one alphabetically is membership, which is on page 16. And that committee is Todd Dimmick. I think Roz is on that committee. There are others that pop in and out as events have happened. Membership is the committee where a lot of our fun events fall into. So the jack-o'-lantern contest is in there. If we have a chili cook-off, that's in there. If we have just membership events of any kind, falls under membership. And again, those things will start to pick up more, we hope, as time goes on. Any questions about the membership committee report? Yes, Brad.
How many members are there?
In the total congregation?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. I think that the total number, I'm not going to have the exact number, the active members are probably about 50 at this point. Is that, Adam, I'm looking at you.
Our total membership is, we just did this with Felicia, so Felicia can correct me on the interwebs if I'm wrong.
Okay.
But it's 106.
Of individual members.
And that, there's a variety of ways that people are members. So about 50 or 60 are what we consider as like active in the sense of filling committee positions and, just generally being around. So.
Showing up on a regular basis. But yeah, in terms of going through the book and looking at people who have signed and are active as members, it's closer to that 100 number. Related to membership is the Old Town Calendar, and that's listed as a separate report because it is a separate entity. Todd and Jen Dimmick basically run that show, and it's a great community building event. It also has a cash flow, so the calendars are sold and money comes in for that, so we handle it as a separate, kind of a separate event because it actually has its own money. So that's the Old Town Calendar. The next committee report is actually, interestingly, is this the one that got split? This is when I woke up and realized it? No. It was Religious Education, which has been chaired by Chris Banthan for the last several years, along with other members. Chris has stepped aside, and Ben Ott, who has been on the committee, will be chair going forward. We have some other new members that are coming on. We'll talk about that in nominating. Ari has obviously been kind of cramped in what it's been able to do in the past year, but there's still, I will say that there's still thought that a summer camp may happen. That was the big presentation 2 years ago when we were going to try to do that. And I think until we get that new committee talking again, there's no commitment, and I don't think we can really commit to it yet until we know people are interested in pulling the load to do that. Any questions for RE? The next committee alphabetically would be the Service Committee, which Margaret Lindquist has chaired. This is a committee that has, in the past, it's been Margaret, Allison, Loretta, and Eileen. We do have two of our newer members, Carol Lotting and Katie Scott, are joining that committee, so we're really excited about that. Any questions or comments about the Service and InReach Committee? That report's on page 19. I'll try to keep people going on that. I would say, like RE, Service from an outreach standpoint has really been constrained by what we've been able to do, because many of the organized events and programs that we've done have been not happening, or if they are happening, they're asking for financial donations, not donations of time and in-kind sorts of things. So that has been a source of, I think, frustration for the Service Committee. InReach keeps plugging along. Tara is very involved in that as well, Eileen. So, any questions about Service or InReach? Okay. The last committee alphabetically is the Worship Committee. That report is on page 11, so you don't have to keep searching. I'll find it for you. Rich Jekyll has been the chair of that committee. And within worship, Rich has also been sort of the adult RE person, and that's where we would have seen pub theology in the past, and we're hoping that that comes back as well. Worship works with both Tara and Adam on the overall calendar, overall filling of the pulpit, changes in worship. It's been actually quite a busy committee over the last 2 years because of, as Adam was saying during his sermon, the amount of pivoting and changes and trying and not trying different things. So that has also been, by extension, a production committee as well. So you have Chris and Lee, and so it's been a pretty active committee in the past couple of years. Any questions or comments about worship? This is where I feel like my alphabet is failing me. I think I've gotten through all of them, except, remember, we hold off on the finance and the financially related reports till afterwards. If there are no questions or comments about the committee reports so far that have been covered, I would take a motion to accept those reports of those committees as written. Moved, seconded. All those in favor of accepting the committee reports as included, say aye. Aye. Aye.
We may have a technology problem.
Okay.
Yeah, is it still planned? Yep. All right, we'll go back and see.
So we're having a technical pause.
If anyone needs coffee.
No, it'll be 2 seconds. Okay. Unless you're saying you need coffee.
No, I just got mine. I just got up.
You're dashing for the coffee pot.
I thought Adam was just leaving. It was something that we
Yeah,
said.
I was done. I was like, oh, that's all I care for. That's good.
I mean, it's still,
Yeah.
she's still there.
Yeah, it still seems to be working. So I would say let's keep going until.
Yes, we might as well. And so the next thing up is the the financial discussion and the finance reports. And Chris, who's wearing multiple hats, as he does, is here to, I think, give just a brief overview of a brief financial overview. If you had a chance to look through this, There's a long narrative about the finance report, and there's rationale in there and discussion. But with that, I'll bring Chris Lindquist up to discuss, and then we'll go through finance and treasurer and assistant treasurer, and we will then take a vote on the budget after we do a brief review.
Thank you, everyone. Just let me know if we suddenly go off the air. Very strange. We've never actually tried to do a live stream this long, so I think things are freaking out a little bit. But thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. Thank you also to everybody for your contributions this year. It was, of course, an unusual year yet again, but the church came through it well, and we wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't for the contributions both of time and money from everybody in the church community. So thank you for that. Really quickly, there were a number of things that happened in the past year that resulted in a couple fairly significant changes to how we're reporting. Primarily, we lost our tenant of 40 years. Riverbend School left the Memorial Hall, and we found a new tenant. So the shift was, I won't say exactly completely seamless, right, Bill? It's pretty close. But that resulted in some shifts of funding, so that you'll notice that some things like rental income looks a lot higher for this past year. It was simply because Riverbend paid off early rather than paying in 2022. So there are some numbers that shifted. We had a large gift from 2020 that didn't get contributed until 2021. So again, the revenue numbers look higher than they would have otherwise. But if you look at things on balance, they stayed relatively the same. And as a result of this, though, we decided to make a couple changes to how we present the budget, indicating in particular the fact that we do have a housing allowance that goes into, for the parsonage, that goes into the staff costs for the church. We previously, they are a wash, so we previously just not presented them in here, but they are there now, so we can just see them more clearly. And also we have added a line to indicate the proposed contribution to the capital budget, which is something that I get up here every year, or whoever is finance chair gets up here every year and says, we should, make sure that we contribute $30,000 a year to the capital budget, because at some point the church will need a new roof, or will need some other major repair, and we're going to need that. And we typically have had trouble making that actual contribution. This year we were able to make that contribution. We have put that $20,000 proposed contribution in for next year, and that is now aligned in the budget so that we just have a more clear picture of what the actual finances of the church are, which I think without having that in there, it obfuscated a little bit the fact that we do need to be making these contributions. And I think, Bill, anything else I should mention? So I will pause and see if there are any questions from anybody online or anyone in the...
And the budget is on page 26. We're looking at the actual spreadsheet.
I was going to ask this earlier about the change to the endowment. Prior to that change, what if a significant request came in? Did it just go into the operating budget for a given year, or what happened to it prior to that?
Never happened.
It never happened.
The first time it happened.
First time we've ever gotten an extra request?
Well, it didn't have some direction to it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we've had those requests before, but they've had
ties to them. Okay.
ties, yeah.
Interesting.
Nothing from online?
So going.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Stay close. You are close. I was going to say to Chris, stay close, just in case there's a question. Not a technology question, a money question. Related, before we actually take a vote on the budget, just as you see, there's a treasurer's report that our treasurer is Bill Seymour, that puts that together. That's on page 20. There's the reconciliation that is part of the treasurer's report. There's the assistant treasurer's report, which is Jackie McBride on page 22. And There's a stewardship committee, which is AKA the canvas or the pledge drive. There's a report there as well. These are all the reports that will kind of be taken a vote on as part of the budget. I just want to point out so you know what you're voting for. In that is also the endowment annual report, and if you are interested in sort of, you know, understanding sort of the thoughtfulness of how that is managed, and it's a great summary of what the endowment has been doing and the care with which the decisions are made on how much comes into the operating budget. But I did want to point one thing out in the endowment report that you might not, maybe didn't notice as you were reading through it, but this is actually on page 25. And this is the first time we've actually gone out to kind of make a point of talking about a foundation level donor. So foundation and sustaining donors, if you look at the very end of the endowment committee report, there are, as time has gone by in the past, and we hope continues in the future, there are families that have made quite significant and sustaining contributions to the church, and it was felt that it would be appropriate to recognize them. And so I'm going to just read those so that we have a record of that in the annual meeting as well. So the Endowment Committee would also like to recognize the following members and families as foundation and sustaining donors: the Honeywell family, Robert and Joan Brack, H. Burton and Ann L. Powers, Augie and William L. Chase are the 4 original foundation donors. So I wanted to make sure that that did not was not ignored in this. I'll give people another chance if you've now kind of put your eyes on numbers and you have a question, if there are any questions at all about the bundle of financial reports, including the budget, which is the most important thing that we need to vote on. If there are any questions, I'll pause before we vote on that. Stephen?
I had one question. I was just noticing the 2022 budget, you have a shortfall, projected shortfall. Now I noticed we've been way ahead the past 2 years. But my question is, does the shortfall get made up by the past 2 years of being ahead? And there were some things that were asynchronous in terms of calendar, so I'm just curious what's going on.
So, yes, so too, we did have, because things were asynchronous, so the prepay for, the prepay by school, and also we changed insurance providers for the church.
And they wanted it ahead.
And so we prepaid that, so actually our expenses drop next year. It will be, the real reason you're seeing the actual shortfall is because of the inclusion of our need to contribute to the capital. We will still have a shortfall. We generally, when we plan these budgets, we're expecting a shortfall, and every year something happens, and we've, at least while I've been here, something has happened to kind of close that gap. But we feel that realistically we're expecting a shortfall, and then we're hoping that
But it's not as big as
encourage, you know, we'll see how things go.
Thank you.
I wanted to just clarify something. If there is conversation in the sanctuary, are people at home not hearing that?
No, they're
hearing it, okay. I didn't know if I needed to repeat that. All right. Any other questions about budget or the financial committees? Have we had any from home, from the at-home viewers? No. That said, I would take a motion to accept the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2022. Do I hear a motion? So moved, seconded, yes? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, and just to be official, I'll take a vote for all the actual reports other than the budget. So a motion to accept the other financial committee reports. So moved. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. And thank you for all that are involved in putting that together. And we'll talk about, we've also got some changes. And we haven't said this out loud. I know it's been put in writing a couple of times, but you know, we've lost some significant folks, and I'm sorry if it's coming out only in the financial conversation. But in particular, I would note Bob Brack, who has been for many years a huge part of the church, in the earlier days, of committee work and running the church and helping with the steeple and so on and so forth. So Bob is the most recent of our elders who passed away this year. So the next thing on the agenda is a little bit of the pledge kickoff. Bill, do you want to come up and make a few comments?
No.
He says he doesn't want to. He's been rehearsing this.
No, he hasn't. Well, first off, thanks to Annetta Pine, who served as the Canvas Chair for 2 years and declined to continue as she had done more than her share. And for the nominating committee of Lee and Todd and Rosemary, rather than go to twist arms to find a replacement, Rosemary stepped up and said, "Oh, Bill and I will do it."
She volunteered you.
So we are going to do it in a less formal and shorter time period this year, which will go about as follows. There's not going to be a packet mailed out. If you do have any church questions about the finances, you can ask me or Chris. We're making a brief presentation today. That's what we're doing right now. And handed out was a pledge sheet, which you can fill out, fold, and leave in a plate or turn in. Or you can, and this is directed to those who are watching us at home, if you wish to make your pledge, you can send an email to pledge@theelliottchurch.org. That will go to the Assistant Treasurer, Jackie McBride, who in turn enters it into the spreadsheet and keeps track of who pledged and then creates the form which you received already at the end of the year that says for your tax return how much you contributed to the church. Here's the less pleasant part. We'll give everybody until after the ski retreat, and then in the week following that, Rosemary and I will make follow-up calls to people who have previously pledged but from whom we haven't heard, and ask them to make their pledge. And I remind people that a very convenient method of paying their pledge is to sign up with the Vanco account, which then connects your checking account directly to the church, and money is automatically subtracted every month and you don't have to think about it. In order to do that, you should contact Jackie, again, if you send her an email at pledge@theelliottchurch.org and ask her to contact you, she will get in touch with you and help you set that up. She has to get the information and then put it in. And finally, to Stephen's comment that it looks like we're losing money this year, but the good news is that we really are pretty sustainable. And through the graciousness of people and the generosity, plus there are a couple of people who don't pledge but who make large annual gifts, we really are okay. And we are okay, and I remind this, and Chris has reminded people of this on a number of occasions, we are okay because of our buildings. And which also then serves to go back around and thank the people who help us maintain the buildings. But the buildings contribute close to 75% of the operating budget. And really, we as members only have to come up with about 25% of what we are really spending. And the goal last year was to come up with $65,000, and the pledges were $56,000. We got gifts which took us past that, which was good, and that may happen again this year. But we pushed the pledge goal down to $55,000 this year, and we really would love to make that legitimately on pledges. And because there were, as Rosemary mentioned, a couple of people left who were large donors, so it's not going to be totally easy to make the $55,000, but it's definitely doable. And our calculation was that in order to get to that, we would need most people to increase their pledge in accordance with inflation by 7%. So the ask is that if you are able to afford it, that you would increase your pledge by 7%. And I think that's it. I end with one final comment that, as you haven't seen, there is no yet Super Bowl contest this year, but I was implored to do it, and I guess we will do it at the ski trip. And so if you are at home and want to participate, send me an email to treasurer@theelliottchurch.org, and I will make sure that in some way, fashion or another, we will be able to do that. I also want to go on record as saying that as if we can do the online betting with DraftKings in real time, I want to take the side of the people who are present in church and not those who have the 15-second delay. And in the crucial last seconds of the game, I place those bets against them.
Never mind.
The Elliott Church.
Comments are gonna start rolling in, I know it.
The Elliott Church, the only place that you can, do a little gambling while you're coming to church. But given the playoffs, that 15 seconds was huge. So anyway, not to belabor. Thank you for that, and thank you in advance if you answer your phone if we call you and you have not pledged, because it'll probably be me or Bill. And some people used to think that I was nicer than Bill, but it's really not true. I'm really not nicer than Bill. So anyway, I think this will be an interesting experiment to see how it goes. And again, we have been able to do this successfully many years. So the last thing on the agenda has to do with we will call for a vote finally to accept the slate, which is the nominating report. It's the very last page of the annual report, so I would suggest you look at that. I wanted to just give a little bit of update. So Todd and I and Lee, the way that the nominating is usually the current moderator and then the previous two moderators, and then some of us just stay on longer and longer. So, but the approach that we take is, looking at which positions are coming up that are due. Most positions are 2-year terms, and we try to keep some balance on the committee so that not everybody's going off at one time. Sometimes that doesn't work out perfectly, but if people's terms are up, we will ask people if they are interested in continuing, and if not, and it's perfectly okay to say no, then we have to go on the hunt for other people to take on those responsibilities. So there are some still openings, and I want to thank really everybody who has stepped up, people who have stayed on, people who have, changed hats. It's great. If you, and again, there's no requirement that everybody do a committee assignment, and it's perfectly fine for all of us to take a break every once in a while, and that's okay too. We do have a few openings still, and you'll see those are TBD under a couple. I'll just point out, oddly, Parish Committee, we still need an at-large member for Parish Committee. I'm going to put a plug in for this because you shouldn't ever try to get people on a committee just because it's easy. Because it's not really easy. It's the governance of the church. However, the time commitment is easy. So the member at large on Parish Committee, the minimal requirement is that they are able to attend the monthly Parish Committee meeting. There tends not to be an ongoing commitment beyond that, but you are a voting member of that committee, which in between annual meetings is having discussion and making decisions about the day-to-day operation of the church. So it's a very important job, but it does not come with a lot of extraneous responsibilities. You had a question, Carol.
Can a clerk be the at-large member? Because that would be convenient. I'm not a voting member.
I know.
I think we'd have to check the bylaws.
Yeah.
I think we have to, my initial response, because I am the bureaucrat in the house, I think it's not quite right, because by definition, that clerk is not a voting member of it, and it's just.
That's another question, but yeah.
But anyway, I'm not looking for anybody to necessarily raise their hand at this moment, but I'm just putting the plugins where I need them. So that's something I will check, Carol, to see if that's a possibility. Thank you for offering. There is one more opening on the Endowment Committee. We've had David Lotting, who's a new member, has signed up to join that, so it's great. We have some new membership. Jen Dimmick is on that, and John Wilkins is the chair. Some of these are vacancies because, for instance, endowment and finance was Bob Brack, passed away, so he was on those committees. If you're interested in that, we can talk later, and that again is there's not any unimportant positions on any of these committees. The endowment committee is strong. It would benefit from having its fourth member, for sure. Mostly, any meetings that we've had for the last 2 years, and I'm telling you it's probably going to continue, is when possible, even in the future, they're going to be virtual, because it's just easier to get them done. So we do have an opening at endowment. We are looking for an additional person on the membership committee, and that person would be to help execute any of the events going forward. We always get people to volunteer at the last minute, so they happen. It would be nice to have the third person on that committee. Religious education, we definitely are looking for an additional person. Annie has volunteered / agreed. I don't think she really volunteered. I think we asked and she said, okay. It's interesting because we have both Ben and Annie, who are parents of 2 of the school-age kids on the committee. You do not need to have children to be on the RE committee. And in fact, it would be even better if we had someone else on the committee that was not so completely involved in the kids' programming. So we're looking for someone for RE, and I think those are all the slots. But we are able to certainly function and continue with the slate as it's been presented, so it doesn't hold us back from voting to accept the nominating report. Are there any questions or thoughts about any of these committees or the makeup of the committees? Okay. I will just reiterate, if there's any of these, and even if it would be an extra person on the committee, if there's any of these areas that you have an interest in and we're probably even filled up on the committee, don't let that keep you from getting involved in that committee, because we can always use extra hands. So if I hear no questions or comments about the nominating report, I would take a motion to accept the nominating report as printed. Moved? Anybody?
So moved.
Seconded? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. We'll wait a few minutes or a few seconds. Take it everybody at home is just volunteering, and that's.
Not volunteering, but they are saying aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody at home. Have we heard from most? Okay. Well, with that, there's always a line item for new business. I do not have a particular new business item to discuss, so we're pretty much at the closing moments of the meeting. I will say, and this is again when we get back to a slightly more normal world, this is also the point where we would be having people sign up for coffee hour to bring food and because we would be hanging out in the parlor. And so these are some of the things that Adam obviously alluded to in his reflection, is that there's a lot of things that are kind of, we think we're on the cusp of bringing things back, and then we've had to backtrack, and we're not oblivious to this at all. We know that there's been some back and forth, and we move ahead and we take a step back, and sometimes it's 2 steps back. But just know that there are a lot of us who are thinking about this pretty much all the time, and we will continue to try to make as much forward progress as we can. I would, before we adjourn, I didn't have it in the agenda to have a closing prayer. Do we have a closing comment?
I saw there wasn't one, so I
You don't need to do
did not
one.
prepare one. Thanks, everybody. Is that a good closing comment?
I think thanks everybody is a fantastic closing comment, and with that, I would accept a motion to adjourn the meeting at 11:51. Moved? So moved, seconded. Everybody in favor, aye.
Aye.
Yay! Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody at home. This was great. Thanks to our technology committee for making this happen and working through glitches. So it's all good. Thank you.